Welcome back as we continue the list of 10 most dangerous serial killers in U.S. history ranked by body count, brutality, and their terrifying grip on society. Before we start, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button to never miss any of our stories. If you didn't watch the first part, go back and watch. 6. Jeffrey Dahmer. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like the guy next door. Shy, polite, awkward. But inside his small Milwaukee apartment was a horror scene straight out of a nightmare. 17 young men and boys, raped, drugged, dismembered. Some were decapitated, some were eaten. This is the terrifying story of Jeffrey Dahmer, a man whose crimes were so gruesome, even seasoned detectives were left shaken. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His childhood wasn't violent, but it was deeply isolated. He was fascinated with dead animals. By high school, he was drinking daily. By graduation, he was fantasizing about dominating and controlling men. His first murder came in 1978. He picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They drank together. But when Stephen tried to leave, Dahmer killed him with a dumbbell and dismembered the body. He buried the remains in the backyard. For nearly a decade, Dahmer avoided murder, but the fantasies never left. In 1987, they exploded again, and this time he didn't stop. Over the next 4 years, Dahmer lured men to his apartment, usually with promises of money or modeling photos. He'd drug them, kill them, then perform necrophilic acts with their corpses. He saved skulls, hearts, even genitals, storing them in his fridge and freezer. He kept photos of his victims' dismembered bodies, posing them, arranging them. His apartment was a graveyard hidden behind one locked door. The worst part? He lived among neighbors. He smiled at people in the hallway. Police even visited his apartment once but left when Dahmer said the strange smell was just spoiled meat. His final mistake came in 1991. A man named Tracy Edwards escaped Dahmer's apartment with a handcuff still on his wrist. He led police back to the apartment. What they found shocked the world. Human heads in the refrigerator, bones in the closet, a drum filled with acid and decomposing bodies. A full Polaroid collection of his victims in disturbing poses. Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested and confessed immediately. He described his crimes in cold, matter-of-fact detail. In court, he was sentenced to 15 life terms over 900 years in prison, but he wouldn't serve even 2. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death by a fellow inmate at Columbia Correctional Institution. Some say it was justice. Others say it was too easy a death. Dahmer's case remains one of the most horrifying in U.S. history. Not just because of the brutality, but because of how long it was hidden. He didn't wear a mask, he didn't run. He just smiled, shut the door, and did things no human should ever do. 7. Dennis Rader, BTK killer. He called himself BTK. Bind, torture, kill. That wasn't just his method, it was his signature. And for over 30 years, Dennis Rader lived in plain sight. A church president, a Boy Scout leader, a loving husband, a devoted father, but behind that normal suburban life was one of the most twisted serial killers America had ever seen. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He grew up quiet, withdrawn. From a young age, he had dark fantasies about control, domination, and pain. He later confessed to torturing animals and fantasizing about tying people up. But nothing in his appearance gave him away. He blended in. He studied criminal justice. He married, had 2 kids, led a church congregation. He even worked as a compliance officer writing tickets to neighbors for having uncut grass. And all the while, he culled. In 1974, Rader claimed his first victims, the Otero family. He broke into their Wichita, Kansas home. He bound the parents and 2 of their children. Then, he strangled each one, slowly watching them die, and then he wrote about it. He mailed letters to police and newspapers, describing the crimes in horrifying detail. He demanded they call him BTK, bind, torture, kill. He wanted recognition. He wanted fame, but more than that, he wanted control. Over the next 3 decades, Dennis Rader murdered 10 people. He tied them up, tortured them, sometimes strangled them with their own clothes, sometimes with cords, ropes, or plastic bags. Then he vanished, sometimes for years. He'd stop, go quiet, then strike again just when Wichita thought it was safe. The The BTK killer became a legend, a ghost story parents used to scare their kids. But no one suspected Dennis Rader. He was the guy at church potlucks, the man leading sermons, the neighbor who waved from his lawn. And that's what made him so dangerous. In 2004, after nearly 2 decades of silence, BTK resurfaced. He sent a letter to a local news station with photos and a copy of a victim's ID. He wanted the world to remember him. He began taunting police again, sending clues, packages, and puzzles. One day, he asked detectives a question. "If I send you a floppy disk, can you trace it?" They replied through the newspaper, "No." So he did. On that disk, police found a hidden file. It had been created by Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church. They searched the church website and found Dennis Rader, church president. They followed him, collected DNA from a discarded tissue. It matched the crime scene. After 30 years, BTK was caught. In custody, Rader confessed with stunning calm. He described the murders in emotionless detail, the planning, the thrill, the control. He even called his killings projects. He kept journals, sketches, souvenirs from victims. He admitted that, to him, murder was like a hobby, a side life, something he did when the urge got too strong. In 2005, Dennis Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms without parole. He showed little remorse. In fact, during sentencing, he gave a bizarre, cold speech, thanking law enforcement and talking about himself in the third person. Today, he sits in solitary confinement, one of the most notorious killers in American history. Dennis Rader wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was a father, a husband, a church leader. But behind closed doors, he bound, tortured, and killed. BTK was never just a name. It was a mission. And for 30 years, Dennis Rader made sure the people of Wichita never slept soundly. 8. Albert Fish. Before Freddy Krueger, before Hannibal Lecter, there was Albert Fish, an old man, a quiet man. But inside him lived something monstrous. He wasn't just a killer. He was a sadist, a cannibal, a predator of children. He once called himself the Boogey Man. And after hearing what he did, you might agree. Albert Fish was born May 19, 1870, in Washington, D.C. He was raised in an abusive home. His father died when he was 5, and his mother placed him in an orphanage where he was regularly beaten. But instead of hating the pain, he grew to enjoy it. That set the stage for the rest of his life. As a young man, Fish developed deeply disturbing fetishes: sadomasochism, self-mutilation, voyeurism. He'd insert needles into his own body, whip himself with nail-studded paddles, eat raw meat sometimes with his hands. But what made him truly horrifying was what he did to children. In the 1920s and 30s, Fish began targeting children, usually under the pretense of helping them or offering work to poor families. He traveled across New York and nearby states, blending in as a quiet old man. He seemed harmless, polite. He'd gain the trust of families. Then he'd take their children. And what he did next is almost too gruesome to describe. One of his most infamous victims was 10-year-old Grace Budd. In 1928, Fish responded to a newspaper ad placed by Grace's brother looking for work. He went to their home, pretended to be a wealthy farmer named Frank Howard, and offered a job. He charmed the Budd family. Then he asked if he could take Grace to a birthday party. The parents agreed. Grace was never seen alive again. What happened to her remained a mystery for 6 years. Until 1934, when Albert Fish wrote a letter to the Budd family. In it, he described in graphic detail how he lured, murdered, and ate Grace Budd. He wrote about strangling her, cooking parts of her body, even which organs he found most tender. The letter was so vile, it made seasoned detectives sick. Using the letter, police tracked him to a boarding house in New York. When they arrested Fish, he didn't resist. In fact, he seemed proud. He claimed to have molested over 100 children, though only a handful could be confirmed. He told police that God had ordered him to kill. He saw himself as a martyr sent to suffer and make others suffer. During his trial, doctors testified about the dozens of needles still embedded in his groin and pelvis self-inflicted over years. Albert Fish was found sane but guilty, and in 1936, he was executed by electric chair at Sing Sing prison. It took 2 jolts to kill him because of the metal needles in his body. His final words? I don't even know why I'm here. Albert Fish was one of the most disturbing serial killers in US history. He didn't just kill, he relished it. He wrote poems, letters, fantasies about children being tortured. And what made him terrifying was how ordinary he looked. A gray-haired man in a suit, soft-spoken, courteous, but behind that face was a monster. He wasn't just a predator. He was the nightmare you pray your child never meets. The real boogeyman? 9. Aileen Wuornos, America's first female serial killer. She said they tried to rape her. She said she shot them in self-defense, but 7 men ended up dead. This is the story of Aileen Wuornos, a woman driven by trauma, rage, and survival, and one of the most infamous female serial killers in American history. Aileen Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her life began in chaos. Her father was a convicted child molester who later died by suicide in prison. Her mother abandoned her before she turned 4. She was raised by abusive grandparents and began trading sex for food, money, and cigarettes by age 11. By 15, she was pregnant. By 20, she had hitchhiked her way across America, drifting from bar to bar, town to town. Eventually, she landed in Florida and turned to sex work full-time to survive. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men were found shot to death along Florida highways. The bodies were found in wooded areas, near abandoned vehicles. Each victim had been shot multiple times with a .22 caliber pistol. The victims were all men. And all of them had picked up a hitchhiker before they died. That hitchhiker was Aileen Wuornos. Wuornos claimed that the first man, Richard Mallory, had tried to rape her. She said she shot him in self-defense. But after that, the pattern continued. Men kept dying. Each case eerily similar. Police were baffled until one key clue blew the case open. Wuornos had pawned a camera and tools that belonged to one of the victims. Her thumbprint was on the pawn slip. Investigators now had a name. In January 1991, Wuornos was arrested at a biker bar in Daytona Beach. She confessed almost immediately, claiming that every killing was an act of self-protection, that the men tried to rape or assault her, that she was just trying to survive. But the evidence told a murkier story. Some victims had no criminal records. Some were found fully clothed. Others had defensive wounds suggesting they tried to escape, not attack. Wuornos was charged with 6 counts of murder. The 7th had insufficient evidence. Her trial became a national spectacle. She was brash, emotional, unfiltered. She cursed at reporters, flipped off the camera. She made bizarre claims about the police letting her kill in order to sell a movie deal later. And yet, she showed moments of vulnerability, describing childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and a life of relentless survival. In 1992, she was found guilty and sentenced to death. While awaiting execution, Wuornos gave numerous interviews, each one more unhinged than the last. She claimed to hear voices, believed the prison food was poisoned. She accused guards of torturing her. Some called her insane. Others believed she was a product of a broken system, someone failed by society over and over again. But the courts didn't waver. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Her last words? "I'll be back." Like Independence Day, with Jesus. Then she smiled and closed her eyes. Aileen Wuornos remains one of the only female serial killers in US history to act alone. Her story was later turned into the film Monster, starring Charlize Theron. But beyond the movie lies a deeper horror. She was both victim and killer, shaped by pain, fueled by rage, and proved that monsters don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes they walk with a limp, sometimes they cry on camera, and sometimes they shoot to survive. And the last on our list is David Berkowitz, son of Sam. He said a demon told him to kill. He claimed it spoke through a dog. And for over a year, he terrorized New York City one bullet at a time. This is the story of David Berkowitz, the man behind the .44 caliber murders, and one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. The year was 1976. New York City was already drowning in fear, economic collapse, rising crime, and a heat wave that had the city on edge. Then came the murders. Young couples shot in their cars, in the dark with no warning, each scene eerily similar. .44 caliber bullets. No witnesses, no clear motive. Police were baffled. Then, The killer sent a letter. It was addressed to NYPD Captain Joseph Borelli and signed, "Son of Sam." The letter was rambling, cryptic, deranged. It said, "I am a monster. I am the son of Sam. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. I am a little brat." He claimed he was possessed, that a demon living inside his neighbor's dog ordered him to kill. But possession or not, the killings continued. Over the next 12 months, 6 people were murdered and 7 more were wounded. The victims had no connection to each other. Most were young women with long dark hair, leading thousands across the city to die or cut their hair in fear. People stopped sitting in parked cars, stopped walking alone at night, stopped trusting the shadows. New York was under siege. The press dubbed him the .44 caliber killer. Then, after the letter, he became Son of Sam. Panic exploded. Headlines screamed warnings. The NYPD launched one of the largest manhunts in city history. Over 300 detectives worked the case. But the killer always stayed one step ahead. Until one parking ticket changed everything. In July 1977, after a final murder in Brooklyn, a witness saw a suspicious man near the scene and noted the license plate. The car was traced to David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker from Yonkers. Police went to his apartment. In his car, they found a rifle, maps of the crime scenes, and a letter threatening another killing. When they knocked on his door, Berkowitz answered calmly. His first words? "Well, you got me." In custody, Berkowitz confessed to all the shootings. He said he was driven by voices. That Sam was a demon inhabiting his neighbor's black Labrador. That the dog barked commands and he obeyed. Psychiatrists evaluated him. He was found fit to stand trial. In 1978, David Berkowitz pleaded guilty to 6 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, a total of 365 years behind bars. But the story didn't end there. Over the years, Berkowitz changed his narrative. He claimed he hadn't acted alone, that a satanic cult helped him carry out the murders. This theory sparked conspiracy documentaries and endless speculation. But it was never proven. In prison, Berkowitz later claimed to find God calling himself the Son of Hope. He began preaching, writing Christian essays, and turning down parole hearings. But for many, it was too late. David Berkowitz had already shattered lives. His reign of terror had left New York scarred. He didn't kill the most victims. He didn't mutilate or torture, but he paralyzed an entire city. With fear, with darkness, with a whisper from a dog, and a loaded .44. These 10 killers didn't just take lives, they rewrote what America thought evil looked like. They weren't shadows in the night. They were husbands, fathers, employees, volunteers, men and one woman who lived among us, and killed with terrifying precision. Some hunted with charm like Ted Bundy. Some wore costumes like John Wayne Gacy. Some claimed demons made them do it, like David Berkowitz. Others like Samuel Little and Gary Ridgway went unseen for decades, because their victims were too poor, too marginalized, or too forgotten. But all of them left a trail of horror that changed the criminal justice system forever. They taught police how to track patterns across state lines. They gave rise to criminal profiling. And they proved that evil doesn't always come with fangs or bloodshot eyes. Sometimes, it looks like your neighbor, or the man pumping gas next to you, or the quiet stranger in a church pew. So what can we learn from them? That monsters are real, that they don't always hide in closets or under beds, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing about them is how normal they seem. These names will forever echo in courtrooms, documentaries, textbooks, and nightmares. But their stories remind us why vigilance matters, why justice must be pursued, and why we can never assume we know what darkness truly looks like. Let us know in the comments. Which of these stories disturbed you the most? And are there other cases you think we should cover next? Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video if it gave you chills. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember evil has many faces.